Welcome to the Sexual Wellness Podcast, real life conversations with industry experts on modern sexuality and how to live a happy, healthy, turned on life. I'm your host, Laura Allen, founder of New Zealand's leading sexual wellness store and holistic sex, love, and life coach, passionately guiding women to expand their pleasure in and outside the bedroom. Welcome back to the Sexual Wellness Podcast. I'm so happy to be here. I've got so much to say, but most importantly, I want to talk about boundaries, because if you have been following my content, you will know that all of my love and attention and fierce energy is going so freaking deep into boundaries this month, and we're going to be going into next month as well. Basically, life is relationships. Okay, all of life is about relationships. Relationship that you have to yourself, the relationship that you have to your loved ones and your partners, the relationship that you have to your community, the relationship that you have with your environment, the relationship that you have with life itself. It is all about relationships. And what is the number one tool for healthy, happy, thriving relationships in all of those categories? It's boundaries. Okay, we all need to learn how to establish and hold healthy boundaries for ourselves. And it is so difficult because gosh, it's just not taught in the schooling system. And unless you had parents sent from the heavens, I imagine you weren't exactly role modeled this at home either. And so for a lot of us, learning about healthy relationships, healthy boundaries, learning how to heal from codependency, which is just such a human experience. I mean, we all have the need to please in some way, shape, or form. And so healing from that and, establishing ourselves into being these sovereign human beings where we know where we end and the other person begins, when we know how to safely assert our boundaries with so much ease and grace, so that we can feel safe within ourselves, safe within our relationships, so that our connections can be deep and meaningful and powerful, because both of us are looking after each other and we're looking after ourselves. There's no gray, there's no murky. It's crystal clear waters, baby. And when you are engaging in a safe, boundaried relationship, let me just repeat that. Safe and boundaried relationship. Honestly, there is nothing sexier than that. Like when I hear the word safety, my entire belly just expands, relaxes, flops out in a way. My womb is just safety. It feels good here. That comes from when we are being completely, authentically, truly ourselves. And a part of that is boundaries, teaching other people who we really are, teaching other people what we really need to feel good. Teaching people that no, I don't behave in that way, or no, I don't do these things, or no, I don't want to engage in that. No. Your no is the answer to your authenticity. Your empowered no is a magnetic yes for what you're actually wanting. When you say no to things that you don't want, even though it is so hard, okay? Look, trust me, I know how hard it is to say no to the tempting, shiny things. I know how hard it is to say no to that really hot guy who is kind of there. He's about, contributing maybe 70 or 80% to the relationship. But there are those really big clear red flags that deep in every single cell of your body. I know that you know it too, that it's a no. that he's not showing up fully for you, that it's not what you actually want, it's not what you deserve, it's not what you are wanting in your life, but you say yes to it anyway. No, when you say no to those situations, you raise your self-worth, and along with that, you solidify your energetic boundaries. The more you say no to shit you don't want in love, in life, in relationships, in your career, the more you will attract the things that you actually do want. This is what energetic boundaries are about, because you're raising your vibration to a level where, opportunities, fuckboys, opportunities that are totally not in alignment with you, where, fuckboys who treat you like shit, all of that stuff doesn't even come into your field anymore. They don't even bother approaching you, because your energetic boundary field is solid as a rock, that they look at you and they just know that there's no point in even trying. Your worth is way too high. It's not even worth the energy trying to penetrate you energetically or lure you with even the slightest feeler, because they already know that they're going to get shot down. That's what it's about, baby. And you can get there. Trust me, you can totally get there. It's a process. It's a lifelong journey, like self-love, like everything that I talk about in everything. It's a process. It's a learning. We're always students. There's always new layers to uncover. And I love that I get to teach this work right now, because honestly, my boundaries have gone from 0 to 100 in the last, 5 years or so. And now I'm entering a whole new level of boundaries. I'm entering a whole new level of what boundaries mean to me. So while I am teaching and explaining this content, I am literally embodying it into my cells and leveling up within my own life. So I'm doing the work too. I'm doing the work too. I wanted to bring you guys some content today, and I'll be talking about boundaries for the next month on the podcast, because it's just so juicy and important. But also, I'm bringing out my next course. It's going to be called Boundaried, Safe and Free. And it's a boundary boot camp for modern women who want to unblock their no and empower their yes, so that they can feel so confident and free in love, lust, and life. Boom, mic drop. Fuck yes, I'm so excited about it. It's going to be a 4-week journey. I'll be guiding you through every week in each module, and we'll have a live Q&A call with me. Yes, with me in there as well. It's going to be full freaking power. So if you want to get your A into G and get your boundaries bumped up to the maximus, then keep an eye out. Come onto my Instagram. Keep listening to this podcast. You can sign up for it. You can go on the emailing list for it so that you do not miss a beat. And I recommend you do, because there will be early bird prices and all of that juicy stuff when you do. Definitely go onto my Instagram. Check out my website. All of the information will be on there. www.laura-ellen.com. One more thing before I go on with the podcast, and that it's like boundaried isn't actually a word. It's like, I guess it's grammatically incorrect, but I just love it so much. It makes so much sense to me. I've done a little bit of A/B testing, and all signs point to go. And I'm just like, Brené Brown said boundaried once, so I'm just going to roll with it. That's the story behind this made up word, boundaried. But I'm going to be using it a lot just because it really flows with me, and it just works. It rolls out of my tongue and I love it. And until someone wants to tell me otherwise, then I'm just going to roll with it. So that's the story behind boundaried. Okay, let's get into the gist of today. So I want to talk to you guys today about why we need boundaries, where they come from, And then what a couple of the things are that stop us from asserting our boundaries, as well as some of the things that can bend our boundaries. You know, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I'll put up a boundary around this, and then all of a sudden you're in an environment and that boundary is just, gone a little bit wobbly. And that's okay. We're going to talk about that. So let's start with the basics. Like, why are boundaries important? I mean, I can talk forever about this, and we are going to have like an entire module about why boundaries are important and how to start establishing them. But on a high level and in a nutshell, boundaries are your sacred space. Boundaries are a way that you can protect yourself, your energy, and your body from the world around you, so that you can be your fullest self, so that you can be expressed, and so that you can be honored, respected, seen, held, all of that kind of stuff. Because we are all individual people with all of our own individual stuff. And if we don't have clear boundaries with each other as to how we can treat each other, how we can relate to each other, then things can get really messy. Things can get very draining very quickly, and things can just become very destructive and very chaotic. Okay, so we have boundaries essentially so that we can create harmony for ourselves and for our relationships. Boundaries create clarity. Boundaries are about communication, and with a lack of communication invites space for storytelling. When we don't have clear boundaries, people can make things up about where we're at with each other, and that's when it can go into this icky, grey, confusing space. Super, super important. I mean, there's a million squadzillion reasons why boundaries are important. But in essence, boundaries are there for our own good, so that we can feel good within ourselves, so that we can show up as our fullest selves. If we're boundaryless, then we are giving too much. We're overgiving. We are overtaking. We are coming from a place of lack, external validation. It can get very leaky very quickly. There isn't that integrity in there. And that doesn't feel good, okay, guys? Like, I'm all about living a pleasure-fueled life, and being boundaryless doesn't feel good. Having rigid boundaries that are so rigid, where you can never shift a thing, where there's no room for ease and flow, because there's two pieces when it comes to boundaries. There's like not having any boundaries, which is where I speak to the most, because that's my experience mostly. And then going to the opposite side of the spectrum, where you have really, really tough, rigid boundaries, and there's no space and no room for change or growth or for flow, because things do change. And it's important that we understand how to stay true to our values and true to ourselves, and find the space and time to reassess our boundaries at a pace that feels good for us. Not because we're in the heat of the moment and following a trend. That's not when we change our boundaries. But when the space and time is right, and it's coming deeply from a space within us, not to please or fit in or belong to the external world that we're in at the moment. So, some of the things that get in the way of us asserting our boundaries. I mean, the biggest one here is that need to please, the disease to please. This is a really big one for women, and it's just such a big piece of how we've been raised, how we've grown up in society, generationally, everything that's happened historically with women has really, brought us up and embedded into ourselves that, we are the the carers, the caregivers. We are the ones who self-sacrifice our happiness for the greater good of our family, for our loved ones, for the people around us. These are the subconscious messages that we get growing up. And so it's completely unsurprising that females, that women have this, disease to please more so than men do. We don't want to rock the boat. There's fear of conflict in there. It's like, oh, if I assert this boundary, if I stand up for myself here, how is the other person going to act? Am I going to upset them? Am I going to hurt their feelings? Is this going to create tension in my relationship? Am I going to be abandoned? Is it okay for me to assert this boundary? So often, especially if you're someone who has, a bit of like PTSD and trauma in your life. I mean, we all do in some way, shape, or form. But there are specific scenarios where, people have learnt that by standing up for themselves, for setting a boundary, that can actually be harmful for them. And they get kicked out of the belonging club, the belonging club. So by them asserting themselves, they get denied love. And that is a real thing. That is a big wound that many of us carry, men and women. So establishing new healthy boundaries is about relearning that it is actually safe for me to express myself, my needs, my wants, my desires, and to assert boundaries. It is totally okay for me to do all of that and still be loved, respected, and belong in my relationship, my community, and in my space. Big aha moment. I talk about this all the time with my clients. And now I'm going to give you a little exercise that I love to share. If this is resonating with you, if you're wanting something really tangible that you can pick up and start doing straight away to sort of start getting comfortable with your yes and your no, it's this exercise called Boundaries and Belonging. And it's designed to teach you that you are safe to say no. Okay, you're still going to be loved, heard, seen, respected, all of those things. So grab a bestie, grab a family member, someone who's neutral, someone who you really, really trust, someone who has earned your vulnerability in life, someone who isn't going to judge you, make you wrong, someone who is going to support you and love you in this process, even if you mess up and are a little bit wobbly as you move through it. Because learning about boundaries is not a linear process. Let me tell you, it is wobbly and it's beautiful. It's all part of the experience, it's all part of the process. Okay, so you've got your bestie. You're going to sit opposite each other. And what you're going to do is you're going to ask your bestie to make a request of you. A crazy, outlandish request. It could be, can I have $1 million? Can I pick your nose? Can I tickle your feet? Can you drive me to the airport at 3 a.m. in the morning? Can you do my groceries for the next 6 weeks? Can you, whatever it is, just like an outrageous request, something that's really quite easy to say no to. Okay, so your bestie is going to ask you this question. She's going to sit there with you, look you in the eye, and you are going to look at her and you are going to say no. That's it. No justification, no explaining yourself, no reasoning, just the simple, straight up N-O. And then your bestie is going to say back to you, oh, okay, thank you. Thank you for looking after yourself. Super important that she says that too. He or she says that. Now, what this exercise does, can you already feel by me talking about it, how, the emotions and the awkwardness and the feelings can come up about that? How uncomfortable is it to just simply say no to someone without, justifying why you can't do this thing for them? Isn't it funny how we feel like we need to over-explain ourselves all the time? Now, this isn't to say that moving forward in life that you aren't going to find other ways to say no that perhaps are slightly more accommodating and compassionate to the request. It's not about being a careless kind of unempathetic bitch in your no. What this exercise is about understanding the feelings and the resistance and the guilt or whatever else is coming up for you. It can be many things when you assert that no. Really get curious about it. Just feel into it. And what you and your bestie can do is you can continue to do this for, a couple of times a week for the next couple of weeks. And every time you do it, ask her to request something that is slightly harder to say no to. Perhaps, she wants to go on a hike when, you would prefer to relax that afternoon, and then say no to that. Now, this exercise is a hypothetical exercise. So, make sure that it's, so that you both know when you're practicing the exercise and when you're outside of the exercise. You can also turn the roles around and you can receive that no. How scary is it? Like, do you feel, what comes up for you when you receive that no from your bestie? Because this is another really important part to boundaries. Sometimes we find it hard to assert our own boundaries because we don't know how to deal with other people's boundaries. Because when other people assert their boundaries, it makes us feel rejected, or like we're not enough, or like we are ... So can you just see for a second the profoundness of this work and why it's so important and why there's so much in here and it's different for every single person? So please, step 1 of pumping up your boundary booty is this boundaries and belonging exercise. Find your bestie, find the person who you can practice this with, and do it. It is so, so powerful. And the more you do it, and the more you both affirm to each other, thank you for looking after yourself. I love that you do that. You inspire me. You give me permission to be myself too. The more you use affirming, loving, accepting language like that, the more you relearn that, actually, setting boundaries is completely safe. I don't need to defend myself. I don't need to be scared. And it takes the emotion charge out of it. It takes the baggage out of it. So in the future, when you're in a real life circumstance or situation, you no longer are going into situations with all of that baggage and with all of that charge, because that's when things get wobbly and messy, because it's like, oh my God, I'm being triggered, but I don't know I'm being triggered. I have to set a boundary here, but I don't know how. It reminds me of that time when I was younger and all of this stuff happened and my parents didn't respect my boundaries and I have so much hurt and shame and grief and everything about that, and I'm just going to project it all into this situation and it's going to be really awkward and messy and feel yuck for everyone involved. That's just life, okay? And we all do it. It's so human. But like I'm saying before, if we want to focus on having quality relationships in our lives, then healing this stuff and healing our reasons why we don't feel safe within our boundaries and within other people's boundaries is the key to freeing ourselves of this burden. It is a burden. And to tapping into our authentic expression. Because that is so sexy. It's so sexy. It's where the deepest love is. It's where the best sex is. You can't have great sex if you're not, solid in your boundaries and not free to, radically express yourself in self-acceptance for you and the other person. It's not about blowjobs. It's not about giving great head. It's not about being the best in bed or like having certain techniques and so on and so forth. Yeah, okay, look, there's elements of that. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I love, learning about that stuff too. But at the end of the day, it's about emotional intimacy, emotional intelligence. And we need to learn this stuff so that we can have deeper, more nourishing, more fulfilling connections in love and in life. And that's relevant for our career. And okay, I've said it a million times. You guys get the drift. Okay, so there's a couple more things that I want to touch on really briefly before I wrap up this episode. And that is a couple of things that can wobble and bend our boundaries in the moment that we need to be really mindful of. So let's say, for example, I have a boundary around touch with humans, human touch. So I only really, actually this is kind of true. It's not like a firm boundary. We'll get into that into the course as well. You've got like non-negotiable firm boundaries that are just like kind of movable until, perhaps at some stage in life you reassess it quietly within yourself. And then you've kind of got softer boundaries that are slightly changeable. But for me, I don't like engaging in physical touch with people who I don't know or have a pre-existing connection with. But, a lot of my community is very cuddly. A lot of my community is very open to touch, especially as I've been doing years and years working in sexuality. I've been going to tantra retreats. I've been to all sorts of, crazy, containers and events where, let's just say people are very, 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 very open. So in those situations where you've got values and you've got a boundary around how you want to behave and be treated, but everyone around you is doing something completely different, that can be a danger zone. That can be a space where you could be likely to be influenced by other people's boundaries and bend your own boundaries. So it's important just to be mindful of that. If you are someone who, doesn't want to drink that much, yet you go out with your friends and you really only want to have one drink, but then all of a sudden everybody else is having bottles and bottles of wine, that can influence your decision making. And it's okay. As we get further down the boundaries track, we start to feel stronger and stronger so that we can interact and engage in those environments really, really safely. But in the beginning, when we're still learning, it's like we're babies and we're still learning to walk. And we are going on the freaking sprinting track by putting ourselves in these environments and in these situations where our boundaries aren't yet that strong. And so it's almost a little bit dangerous to put ourselves in these situations where we are likely to be influenced and swayed in the opposite direction. Alcohol, of course, is a total boundary killer. Alcohol, drugs and alcohol, plant medicine, whatever you want to call it, is a really great way to give you wobbly boundaries. Okay, and so it's like, you wake up in the morning after a big night and you've actually done a whole host of things that you probably wouldn't have been in integrity for you had you have been sober. So look, I'm not here to say, don't have alcohol, stop drinking completely and entirely, but I think it is really important to understand how drugs and alcohol can affect your decision making, and that, when you are engaging in it, to make sure that you're in a safe space with people who can respect and understand where you're at and know where to draw the line. That's just, it's safety, isn't it? It's safety. there's also so much grief in this for a lot of people, because I don't know, a lot of my clients, a lot of my friends, myself, many people in the entire world who I speak to, you know, I've hung out in all sorts of communities, and, you know, I feel like it's something that a lot of people share, who, especially those who drink alcohol, you know, that feeling of waking up in the morning, having done something that they really didn't want to do. And that can feel really, really painful. So I guess the intention is to simply look after yourself and be really mindful when you are actually, you know, when it is responsible for you to be drinking and not drinking, and just be mindful of the fact that if you are learning to assert new boundaries, you're not in a space where your boundaries are super heard and super respected, then perhaps it's better for you to not drink as much, not take as much, and to be slightly conservative so that you can uphold your integrity with your boundaries and your values and what you're trying to do right now. Just an idea. Another thing is that, like, you know, you can be completely sober. Okay, we're taking drugs and alcohol out of the situation now. But getting drunk on Eros is a total boundary killer. Okay, and what I mean by that, by getting drunk on Eros, is erotic energy. You know, when you are seeing someone, you're like, oh, you know, I don't want to have sex, but like, let's just fool around or whatever. And then all of a sudden you guys are really hot and heated, and one thing leads to another. And then all of a sudden you've gone too far and you didn't actually want to go that far. But in the moment it was so hot and heavy, but actually you still come to after the fact feeling, that was a boundary and I didn't uphold that boundary. And of course, practicing self-love and compassion and self-acceptance is like of the utmost importance in these moments. It's not about, you know, making yourself super wrong or super bad or anything like that. But just know that Eros is intoxicating. Erotic energy is intoxicating and affects you the same way that drugs and alcohol does. So again, be mindful, practice self-care. If you are learning about boundaries and you're not yet solid as a fucking rock, especially within your sexuality, you know, like, don't put yourself in situations that are going to be risky and dangerous for you. Straight up. That's it's self-care, okay? Okay, this is the end of the episode. There's actually so many more notes that I had, but I'm going to have to save them for the coming, you know, 4, 5 for the course, for everything. I mean, of course, we're going to be breaking all of this down, going really, really deep, and there'll be lots of action tasks for every point in the course, Boundaried, Safe and Free. In the meantime, like I said, come onto my Instagram, _Laura, LAURA, _Ellen, ELLEN. Keep up to date there. That's where I show up the most, and that's where I have the most fun. So come and hang out on my Instagram. If you're not on Instagram, come onto my website, join my Facebook group. I've got a private Facebook group for women only, where, you know, we have like this really beautiful kind of safe, nourishing space for women to talk about things that are on top for them. It's called the Pleasure Posse on Facebook. Join that. These are the places that I will be keeping you all updated to the absolute max. There's going to be a free training series as well. Free! So yeah, just like keep in touch, keep listening to the next upcoming episodes, because there will be more and more information coming out. And until then, find that bestie, do that exercise, and start to really, really focus on what it is that you value and how you want to be treated, and how you can start to incorporate better boundaries into your life. Have an amazing, amazing week, and I'll be back with another episode super soon. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like and subscribe, or share it with someone who you feel could benefit from hearing it too. My mission is to bring healthy sexuality to the mainstream, so be sure to leave your 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app, because that way this content can land in the ears of those who need it the most. If you're looking for more resources on how to live a turned on life, check out my website at www.laura-allen.com, where you'll find events, coursework, free downloadable workbooks, as well as my coaching packages. And lastly, I want to thank you for taking the time to prioritize yourself in this exquisite way, because when we do, that's when we can really start to show up for the rest of the world. And until next time, thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back with another episode soon.